I mentioned that I was going to have so many of these shows this week, and it's true. And it's hard to keep up when they're all live, but don't worry. All of the episodes on the BizBook Pub Hub are available. They come out every Tuesday and Thursday, and they're broadcast at my website, bizbookpubhub.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can just go subscribe and get them brought right into your app so you can listen to them when you have time to. The content's been incredible. Speaking of which, I don't want to delay introducing this panel. When you're writing, it's easy to get stuck chasing perfection, but here's the truth. The first draft is just the beginning. The real transformation happens in revision. Giving yourself permission to be imperfect is what makes progress possible. The messy middle, the rewrites, the second guessing, that's where the book and the author truly take shape. I'm living this right now as I wrap up edits on my fourth book, Launch Your Book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews That Drive Revenue, which is set to launch in July 2025. If you want a behind the scenes look at how I turn a book into a business asset, you can join my book launch team. Just go to booklaunchbrainstorm.com to learn more. Now, today, we're going to hear from authors about their journey from blank page to published book. With me, I have three authors. Bridgett McGowen-Hawkins co-wrote Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One, the only guide you need to pen, publish, and profit for your nonfiction book. A no-nonsense, empowering guide that helps aspiring nonfiction authors navigate the publishing process with confidence. Robert Aguilar wrote, Forget What You Know About Strategy, The Hazards of Strategic Planning, a powerful guide for senior leaders seeking to master strategy formulation and execution, offering real-world insights to avoid pitfalls and drive transformative change in today's fast-paced business landscape. And Sophie Lechner wrote, Unlock Your Impact, the roadmap to magnetic client attraction for entrepreneurs who hate marketing, a refreshing guide for mission-driven entrepreneurs who want to attract clients naturally by leading with purpose instead of self-promotion and transform marketing from a dreaded task into a joyful extension of their impact. Please join me in welcoming Bridgett, Robert, and Sophie. Bridgett, I'm going to kick it off with you. Thanks for being here. I'd love to know a little more about the audience you had in mind for this incredible book you wrote. I was just reading it again as I was finishing up my own book, thinking like, what am I missing? What am I missing? So tell us, like, who did you have in mind?
100%. Thanks a ton, Robbie. So Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One is your no fluff guide that every expert, coach, speaker, or business leader needs before they waste time or money self-publishing the wrong way. If you've got a story to share, a strategy that changes its lives, or a signature talk that deserves more than 45 minutes on a stage, then you are the ideal reader of Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One. Before you write one word, you've got to read this book. It's going to save you headaches, and it's going to help your book actually work for you.
That's awesome. And Robert, how about you? Who do you have in mind?
Hey, Robbie. So I wrote the book for the audience of anyone that's in charge of a change initiative for an organization. They really need to stop and reflect and see kind of what it takes to no kidding formulate the strategy, and then the sticking point, which is actually execute that strategy, which is where a lot of pitfalls lie. So after 20 plus years of experience in this space, I've written the A to Z of what I've gone through in the trenches, making a whole series of implementation and changes to better the organization, ranging from $2 billion on one side to $100,000 on the other, as far as budget is concerned. But really, the sticking point is you as a senior leader, or again, anyone really in charge, or part of accountability and responsibility for a change initiative in an organization, really needs to read this book to kind of learn the A to Z, and how I learned it with all the blood, sweat, and tears I went with it over the last 20 years.
This happens a lot, Robert and Bridgett. People get on the panel based on your availability, and then we find commonality. And I can already see both of you are very passionate about your topics, very knowledgeable, and hoping other people can learn from you and avoid very common missteps and mistakes, headaches, and get results. Because, Robert, I've been part of that change management experience as an employee, and it really feels like we did all that work and it just sits in a document in a drawer somewhere. And then 5 years later, they like brush it off, and we like kind of do a control find to like replace some keywords, and then it goes back in the drawer.
Yes.
It's awful. It's such a waste of time, and I love the idea of actually doing the implementation. Speaking of implementation and getting our heads wrapped around that, Sophie, tell us a little bit about who your audience was for your book.
Right. So as entrepreneurs, and you've already, mentioned that, Robert and Bridget, you are very passionate about what you want to do. You want to help your clients. You want to bring the value, the expertise, the wisdom. And then you discover you have to do marketing. So people are not going to line up around the block. You're not Apple. And so what I find is a lot of entrepreneurs just hate marketing. And I found a way over my several years of consulting and coaching to do your marketing in a way that feels aligned to your values and really brings the joy of your client work into your marketing. So you're doing your client work and it turns out to be marketing. So that's my audience, is mostly mission driven entrepreneurs, people who are passionate about helping others and helping them get the joy back into their marketing.
That's amazing. You and I know a lot of the same people, and that challenge comes up so often, where people like really passionate until it comes to spreading the word, and then they suddenly like get angsty. And I know that happens even with authors. I know that authors like pour themselves into this book, and then they don't talk about it, right? Or they don't know how to integrate it into the work that they do. So I love how you're thinking differently and sharing that strategy and process with everybody. You're all gifted in your own ways, and I love that this is coming out. Bridget, I know you've written more than one book. Has anyone else written another book that I'm not aware of? All right, so Bridget, I'm going to come to you second, but first I want to talk to these two. Robert, I mean, listen, writing a book, it's not like the thing we all say we're going to do. Some of us, maybe when we're 5, maybe that's the impetus of writing a book, but it sounds like you really had this body of knowledge and you knew that you wanted to share it widely. But how did you get over the like voices in your head? There's always some inner voice about writing a book. How did you get past that? What was holding you back? And how did you move forward and actually get to the finish line?
Rob, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said earlier, it's you have to accept the imperfection in the entire process. And that was really the first part that was the most difficult hurdle to get over. Was you want to make the message as concise, as effective as possible, and you want to pour into it all the passion that you've had over the X amount of years that you've been in that practice, all in one. And then when the words come out, it seems like none of those 3 or 4 factors really make their way into this sentence by sentence. So what I did was just kind of take a step back, and just like you said, hey, I agreed that not everything I was going to write was going to come out perfect, but as long as the message was still relevant and clear, it would be considered a success. And so that kind of freed things for me to allow to just no kidding get to writing and putting the ideas to paper. And so that took kind of the angst and the fear out of the writing process. It just allowed me to get more comfortable. Hey, really, just the thought here is this, in simple terms. And then I knew that I could come back and edit, sentence after sentence later. The first job was just getting the thoughts on paper, and really just remembering what those hard-won victories and losses were, and then just putting that into the message as well. I'm not worried about the exact word.
You and I know each other through Linda Popke, and I believe she's one of the people who was supporting you with your book, and likewise, she's the 3 times now has been my editor. And I remember the first book that we did together, I sent her an email with a subject line, "Crappy first draft," and I may have even written a sharper note than that. And she just wrote back, she goes, "No one has ever said that." And I'm like, that's what it is. Like, I had to be very open. Like, this is everything I could pour into it. It's as good as I can get it right this second, but it is not the finished product by any means. But I had to just be like, release that expectation that it's gonna be perfect out of the gate. So getting the right kind of support. Linda Popke is also one of our BizBook Pub Hub partners, and she's on the website bizbookpubhub.com. So people can check out what she does. It's not just editing; it's a whole range of services for authors. But having someone like that kind of in our corner, knowing that the words can get shaped later on, I mean, that's great. I really appreciate hearing that. And Sophie, I know this has been something you've wanted to do for a really long time, because back in November 23, when I announced that I was doing the first Kindle cross promotion, you were like, "Oh, but I don't have a book yet." And here you are with a book. So tell us, like, what was sort of the messaging you were hearing in your head and from others, and like, how did you finally move the process forward?
Yeah. So the biggest hurdle for me was really to get all of my thoughts and ideas into a model. I wanted to have a model that would, a framework. That's just how I operate. And so I spent a lot of time doing the outline, which basically was what is the model. Once I had that, I actually spent time going back and forth between writing the book, taking the chapter, publishing it on LinkedIn as my newsletter, getting some feedback, getting some thoughts and conversations, and then bringing that back into the book. So I know it was a meandering process, but at the same time, it really gave me a lot of confidence in what I was writing, and we'll come to that later, I'm sure. It helped build my launch team. So really sharing the thoughts helped me to sharpen them and craft exactly how I wanted to explain them, because putting something on paper that some people will read, 6 months to a year from now, versus that immediacy of people are going to read this like today, now, is very different. And bringing that energy in made a huge difference for me. And
This is awesome. I want to underscore this because I just had a conversation with someone a couple weeks ago who once again shared something like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to tell people that I'm writing a book because like someone might steal my idea." And it's like, well, then you shouldn't be writing a book on an idea that people don't know you for. Like, you don't know enough about this idea yet, and the audience that needs this idea. Like, look, I mean, how could someone steal an idea if you've never even used it? It's not yours yet. So the idea that you had, the process you had, I should say, I don't think it's meandering. I think it's actually the best possible route to getting an end product that people want and are waiting for and are like, hey, where's that book going to be? Because, when people know that this is ending up as a book and they're ready for it, they're going to hold you externally accountable to getting to the finish line. And like you said, be your enthusiastic, supporters, those early launch team members, the street team, almost like energy of wanting to help you spread the word. So I think it's a wonderful process. And compared to writing in a sort of secretive, don't let anyone look at the paper until it's done. And then you just hope that the product you created is worthwhile and that people want it, which is unfortunate. I think a lot of people go that route. Kudos. I really think that's great. Bridgett, you come to this as both an author, a publisher, a speaker who uses books as part of your process. You've got 4 book titles, including the one we're talking about today that you co-wrote with Allie Berthium. And Allie was also on one of these panels, so you get to hear her perspective as well. So the first time, just rolling back the clock, Bridgett, to your first book, before you knew that this was going to become a whole thing for you, because you weren't yet in the publishing space when you got started, if I understand that. So how did you get your, it's almost like, how do you kick yourself out of the way so that your book can become a thing? What was that like for you?
Absolutely. And I've actually penned 12 books. I got over that inner voice. Yeah, I got over that inner voice in my head with that first book. My process is similar to Sophie's. I actually pulled the best of my content from LinkedIn. When I was writing that content back in the day, I wasn't writing it thinking it was going to end up in a book. But when I had the opportunity to offer a book at a speaking engagement, I pulled the best of the best content based on what people loved and liked on LinkedIn. But I got over that inner voice or that inner critic to write that first book, which is entitled Real Talk, by getting real with myself and getting real with my purpose. You see, I had to tell those voices, Robbie, thank you for your input, but y'all don't pay my bills. I realized I wasn't writing for critics. I was writing for that one person who needed what I had to say. I stopped chasing perfection and I focused on clarity. I gave myself permission to write messy, to revise later, and trust that my voice was valid. I didn't worry about what had already been written. I didn't worry about it being perfect. And as a matter of fact, after I published that first book in 2019, I came out with a second edition of it in 2022 and added all the stuff that I thought about 5 seconds after hitting publish in 2019. And I reminded myself daily that somebody's breakthrough is waiting on me to stop doubting and to start typing. It
Mm.
was not about silencing those inner voices or the inner critic completely. It was about turning the volume way down and amplifying the mission instead.
Mm. Oh my gosh. I feel like we're at church. You just preached it. That was beautiful. I need that sometimes. You know, I'm nearing the end, right? And I'm at the tinkering stage, which I was joking with my wife. She says, "How much more do you have on your book?" And I said 5%, which could take about 8 years, give or take. Give or take a decade, you know, like but yes, there's this point where you have to remember that your dilly-dallying is getting in the way of someone being able to access your content who desperately needs it. And that's the reason we're doing all this, is to have that bigger impact and to attract the right people to us, because all of us have some kind of business related to these books. It's not just about the book, it's about the broader mission. So thank you for centering on that for us. I'm curious, Bridgett, now that you've done that, I didn't realize 12 times. Incredible. Tell us about your latest endeavor. Is this your first time co-writing a book?
No, it wasn't, but it was my first time co-writing a book like this. That makes no sense, but just roll with me.
Okay.
I've done other compilation books with other people, so I kind of consider those co-writing projects. But
But
this,
each
yes,
chapter.
was my first. Yes, this indeed was my first time just having a single co-author.
Yeah, which is really different than like you write your chapter, they write their chapter, and they get compiled together. So, I
Yes.
mean, that's a very unique experience. And, you know, you clearly brought a lot of know-how about the publishing process, you know, to the table. You found a good partner. Is there anything different about that? Because I no one else here that I know of has done that. And I'm just curious, like, what are the things you look for in a co-writer, a co-author?
Sure. Number one, are the two of you compatible? Are you going to work well together? This book, Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One, came about after Allie, my co author, and I had a podcast conversation. And you know how it goes, Robbie. The conversation when you're live and in the thick of the interview is fantastic. But it's when you stop recording that the conversation gets real. So Allie and I were talking about all the things that we wish authors knew, all the things that we wish aspiring authors knew. And yeah, girl, and then we stopped and said, after about 45 minutes, okay, off air, we should write a book. Now, we had known each other for some time. I knew her work ethic. I knew what she liked to do. I knew what she was good at. She knew me. So, number one, making sure that your co author and you are simpatico. And then establishing a timeline and making sure that you are supporting each other and making sure that you're staying on top of the project, being flexible with each other, understanding when things come up. So that's number two, is just having that timeline. And then number three, really treating it as a business. It's good to work with someone who's a friend that you really like and that you are compatible with, but also understanding this is about business. And sometimes you know, you have to get firm and you have to get serious and you got to get down to business. But those were the three things that I would recommend people look for. Is it a good match? Are you aligned on the timing? And then also, are we going to be serious about this?
Yeah, that's great. And I think that there are times where it really makes sense to have that second voice be part of it. It may also help a first-time author get to the point of finishing a book because they're working with someone who's maybe a little more experienced. Or it could be an adventure for two new authors to do together. Hey, Robert, let me come over to you and ask you about so you have this book. You have this belief that you could change people's lives for the better by giving them access to this great information you've acquired after decades of work in this space. What were some of the early success metrics that you were going to be paying attention to when the book first came out, and you were thinking like, oh, if the book blank, I'll know it did well, and then I'll follow up with what changed as you were an author. It was no longer a one day I would be an author. You're now an author, and the book started performing in different ways. So what were the early signs that you were looking for?
I think first and foremost, kind of tag up to what Bridgett had said. I was looking for feedback from my network, and so some of that feedback, a lot of it came from the LinkedIn side, personal friends that had read the book, and a lot of them came back and said, "Hey, it really hits home. You know, what you wrote is really it's an effective message. I think it really does delineate in a simple manner, and that's what I was going for. how to go from A to Z, from thinking of some great change initiative that would make the organization better, to bringing it to fruition, along with the culture that goes with it and the entirety of the workforce. So it's that feedback loop that I got after the fact. Really, it was after the book was published, from multiple sources saying, "Hey, this really hit home. I enjoyed reading it," which was one of the best feedback I think I could have gotten. Not only am I worried about the message being effective, but I really do want people to simply enjoy it. So I try to write it in a way that people could enjoy it. And at the end, like we talked about earlier, it became an enjoyable thing. Sure, we're all extremely busy people, and finding the time to write a book and get the message right. And like we talked about, these inner voices are all these things are happening in unison at once. At the end of the day, if you can enjoy it, then I think that also will also translate to the reader. And that was the hope. And when I got that feedback, that really was my metric for, hey, I did an okay job, or I did better than I expected with all the fears and those inner voices.
Robert, were you already in a community of other authors? Like, was that part of the world you knew, or is this something you were newly coming into?
I was not. So this is something completely new to me.
So that's hard. I just want to acknowledge that, because if you're in a space with other authors, you get tips and hints and like warnings, and you get to see some directional signposts that can help as you're navigating that process. Even like scams to look out for, or this is a great marketing thing, or this was a waste of time, I tried it, or whatever it might be. And not having that can be really difficult. And it's one of the reasons I started hosting these virtual networking events through the hub, was to give authors the opportunity to connect with each other, because I think there's just a lot of informal learning that goes on. As you've now gotten to know more authors, and you now are definitely part of an author community that we've been creating through the campaign, through the hub, what was a surprising learning that you got from other authors that you've been able to apply to your experience?
I think just the creative process, and how, Bridgett and Sophie talked a little bit about how that creative process works, how they, outlined their thoughts, got them together, and then put them to paper. I think just that process, that the mechanics of that was what I've learned a whole lot from the community. That and the support, the kind of resounding message is, hey, everyone's scared. Everyone's scared to be vulnerable, but your message is an important one. Yes, these are the mechanics that I've learned from other great authors. This is how you actually get content onto paper and publish it, which I was in dire need of. To your point, not having been around in a community before, but it was just the fact that, hey, your message is an important one, and someone's failure or someone's victory or success is really dependent upon and hinging on me getting that message out there. So I think those two components were critical for me that I've gained being part of the community. And along the way, I'll go back and say to you, much credit to folks like Alan Weiss and Linda Popke. They were absolutely instrumental in bridging that gap. Not having had the community support going into the process, they were really instrumental in pulling me through. That and support from family.
Well, thank you for that. Sophie, when I come over to you, you were in a community of authors. You knew lots of people who had books. It got to the point probably like everyone has a book. That's not true, but it feels that way when all your friends have books, working on books. You knew you wanted to write a book. So I think you had a little bit of an inkling. When you started this process, what were those metrics that you were hoping for? Like, what did you want the book to do? Was it sales? Was it reviews? Was it some sort of inbound, like being booked in so many stages? Like, what were some of the things you thought initially might be important, and did that evolve as you went through your process?
Yeah, so I'm not very much of a metrics kind of person, but and so amorphously, what I wanted was really to change people's minds, entrepreneurs' minds about marketing. But being, aware of the issue of visibility, and having been in your orbit for a while, I knew that the initial launch was a really important milestone, and that reviews, not number one bestseller, but reviews was the metric to really go for. So I went for it. I followed your process, and it worked out tremendously. So ultimately, I want this to, of course, bring me some return, because I did spend some. Maybe I should have read your book, Bridget, before, but I did spend quite a bit of money putting this book out there.
You can
So
read it. You can read it when you come out with the second edition.
right, right. And so, yes, now I want to make, sales of program revenue. I want to, and I've already started that. I've started a short program. I'm going to do more. So yeah, that eventually will be the ROI that I'm looking for.
This is sort of an example of when you're around authors and people who serve authors, your idea initially of what to put energy, effort, and money towards is different than someone who doesn't have that access, who just knows the term bestseller. And like, that's what they set their hopes and dreams on. And then they get sold somebody wants to take their money to help them achieve that, when it's not really going to move it's not going to change their bank account in the positive. Let's just say that way. And you did focus on reviews, and this is a public acknowledgement that you have 61 total ratings, and every single one of those 61 people wrote a review, which is incredible. So we're going to break this down for those who are listening in. First of all, 100% of the people who did a rating also left a review, which means you had a very focused campaign to get written reviews. That's meaningful because it's very easy to get people to leave you a 1 through 5 star rating. They have to do nothing other than go to the site and click it. They don't have to buy the book, and they don't have to write anything. So there are a lot of authors that have 100, 200 plus ratings. And I've seen some who have less than 10 written reviews, and that doesn't make any sense. That's not the social proof we're looking for. The second is you got over 50 written reviews on there. Not easy to do. It means you had a real system and process in place, and we'll talk more about that. And you also have recency. I was seeing you just had book reviews coming in as of this week. You had a bunch of reviews coming in related to this last campaign we were all part of. And all of that is helping you. And the last factor here is verified purchases. And so 43 of the 61, which is really good, that's 2/3, were purchased through Amazon. And a lot of times that's a piece that authors have a hard time with, because they're mostly doing bulk sales, and the author didn't necessarily sell the book to them through Amazon and all that. So these are all the factors that are going to be helping your book in a pretty crowded market, right? Because it's about marketing. There's lots of books on marketing. So to have your book come higher on that search results page is going to be really helpful for your visibility and discoverability, not just to your network, but also in the world of the search algorithm. But I'd be curious, like, what came of that process that you weren't expecting? Were there any, conversations that led to a collaboration, or getting you on a podcast, or being interviewed somewhere, that came from you just being engaged with these prospects and referral partners that I know you invited into your launch team?
Well, the first surprise was getting 215, I think, members on my launch team. I mean, that was more than double what I had expected. I had set my goal at 50 reviews when I, was in the process, like a month before the launch, and got to that number very quickly. So I sent another email. It's like, oh, sorry, new goal 100. So which now I'm, working towards, but you got to be working towards a goal, right? I learned from the master. And so one of the questions in the initial Google form was, do you know anybody who has a podcast who would like to have me on? And that flooded in, and I got 20 plus podcasts in 6 months, which was pretty intense. So that was amazing how people just really rallied to bring what they had once you asked the right question. What's another surprise? How many people came to my launch party? I mean, as you know, I was thinking, launch party, I don't know. Do I need that? And I'm so happy I had it. So 70 people showed up and stayed, the entire hour.
Yeah, I remember your stats because they were astounding. 75 people were there for almost the entire thing, and 65 people were there for 45 minutes or more. I mean, that's incredible that so many people came and stayed. And I
Yeah.
remember that we did the whole event together. I loved emceeing it because great energy in the room. And then we turned off the recording and just were hanging out.
Yeah.
And there was still a couple of dozen people who like weren't ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, so I learned a lot from that, and you know, I think as a result of all of this, it's really been hammered into me that I need to start a community, because there's a lot of people that just want to be together in a room and talk, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. So many learnings from yours. We'll come back and talk more about what you learned along the way. But really, congratulations. I just want to say, like, really well done. And I know that not all authors focus on reviews because, like, how they think about this process is different. Robert, I see you had 11 ratings and 11 reviews, which again, 100% means that everybody you asked did it. What was your approach to getting reviews? First of all, why do you think it was important? And second, like, who were the kind of people you were asking?
Well, it really went back to reliance really heavily on Linda Popke and team for exactly who to target, how to target them, and then really what it is that I was asking. It was complete reliance on Linda. And like you said, 11 isn't a whole lot, but 11 out of 11, it is a good metric that makes me feel great for this first go around anyway. So really put my trust in Linda, and it really played out very well especially for this first book. Again, not being in this space and community, first time in, and the audience that I have is particularly going into LinkedIn. It's a different type of audience, and so getting that 11 out of 11 was a great metric. Moving forward, it's going to be a continual reliance on Linda to kind of craft the message even better, and then do the campaigning, even more than I thought was necessary is what opened my eyes. So, you write the book and you think you're done, especially for your first go around. That really is the beginning of really this whole journey. And that really important part is, like you said, the messaging to people, what you're looking for, what the metric is, very specific, very precise and tangible. And that's what Linda helped me with. So I'm sure on the next and third, second, third, fourth go around, using her, leveraging her experience, this experience, other authors here, I'll get even better at it. But
the good news is that, Robert, if you keep coming back to the Kindle cross promotion campaign, one of the things I encourage all of the authors who are participating to do is to lower their book a couple weeks in advance, not broadcast that to the world, but make a list of, somewhere between 15 and 25 people that you're going to one-to-one ask for that review and say, hey, I'm going to be part of this campaign in a couple of weeks. Can you get a review on Amazon before then? Because if we all get a few reviews a few times a year, that all helps with the recency. The number will slowly go up, but also we'll always have some recent reviews, and that'll be important as far as the discoverability on Amazon. So sometimes as you're doing a big launch or relaunch, there might be that big push with like hundreds of people, as you heard Sophie talking about. But there's also something to be said about the hand-picked few. And ideally, these are people that would really, truly benefit from the message in your book, not the friends and family, but the clients and prospects, the people who understand the value of what you're doing and have either experienced your value because you've been a consultant for them or a speaker. And this is a way that they can kind of give back to you, but also invite a friend to come read the book. So it kind of gives them permission to spread the word. And Bridgett, you and I were talking a moment ago before this went on air about how you focus on publishing books and marketing isn't the piece that you focus on for your authors. But as an author yourself, the authors are in charge. You're like, listen, I know what that's like. Like, authors are in charge. So how do you approach marketing a book, particularly this new one? I think it's so interesting finding the audience for it. Because it's like everybody needs it, but no one knows they need it. I think that's also true for Sophie's book. Like, these are the books that people like, you almost have to be like, hey, do you know you have this problem? And do you know there's a solution for it? Like, so how have you thought about that approach?
Absolutely. Well, success for Do Not Write a Book Until You Read This One. It wasn't just about having a pretty cover or a big launch day. For me, success looked like one thing: impact. I wanted the right readers, the ones stuck in quote unquote what if land. I needed them to finally take action. So yes, I track the pre-orders and email opens and direct inquiries about Press 49 publishing services. And yes, I tracked getting on stages, whether it's virtual stages or in person, to speak either about the book or just the pitfalls to avoid when becoming an author. And I tracked how often people said, I had no idea this was the real publishing game. I think that last one was really the win. Now, when it comes to probably the most effective marketing strategy for me that leads to more book sales, unequivocally, hands down, speaking. Without a doubt, when I am on stage, virtually or in person, and I say something like, stop writing the wrong book, you best believe people are going to lean in. You see, they see me, they hear me, they trust me. And then the book becomes the next logical step. Now, I also leveraged your Kindle cross promotion tax day. I don't know the actual name of it, but I know that it got Allie and me and our book listed as number 2 in business aspects category. I know number 2 is the first one to lose, but I'm still going to tout that. So I leveraged that sale on Amazon to drive visibility, to climb rankings, which really helped. But nothing beats connecting with an audience and showing them value in real time.
I appreciate that. I totally second a lot of what you're saying about leveraging these moments to get more visibility amongst the circle of people we already have, and opportunities to broaden that circle with speaking, podcasts, etc. And having a book, I've been thinking about a book as a way to prop a door open to an ongoing conversation with someone, because it's not just a one-time outreach like, hey, here's information about my book, or hey, will you write a review for my book? And that's kind of the ask. But it's the over a period of time having a back and forth conversation that I almost picture that book kind of holding that door open a little bit so it can't close all the way. And over time, you hope that door stays further and further open and people are coming to you as opposed to you always reaching out to them. And sometimes when they come to you, they are inviting you now to knock on lots of other doors and present to a whole group of people who'd be interested. And there's so many people who need a book like yours, really. Like they don't know that they're writing a book that's probably not going to be the book they need. Kate Colbert, when I interviewed her on the podcast, she said something about people treat their books like it's trash. When it stinks, it's time to get it out. She's like, don't write a bad book. Like, it's just worse than writing no book. Like, having no book is less noticeable than having a really bad book out there. So don't rush. Read books that will help you figure out like the must read and the right kind of book to read, to write for your audience. I think it's so important. Sophie, what would you like to add about the marketing strategy? You're the marketing person on this panel. So like, what are the tips you have for authors?
So before we get to that, I actually wanted to say, talking about writing the wrong book, I sat down and wrote 20,000, 25,000 words before I got bored with my own book and decided this wasn't the book I wanted to write. So yeah, that's a thing.
That's really important, though. I bet you that happens to so many people. A lot of times when people talk to me, I tell them, that's your second book. You first have to write this other book, right? Or something like that. Like, how did you figure that out? It was a combination of you being bored or not getting feedback. Like, what did you realize about that first attempt?
Well, I wasn't even getting any feedback because I wasn't sharing it at all. I was just, it seemed the logical thing to do. I had been a LinkedIn coach for a while, so I wrote a book about, how to use LinkedIn. And it took me a few months before I realized, well, there's only so many books about LinkedIn out there. And what I need to write about is not how to use LinkedIn, because it's just a thing you can learn on YouTube or whatever. I need to write about why my way of using LinkedIn is different than other people's way of using LinkedIn. And so I had to just unmarry myself. I don't want to say divorce, but unmarry myself from the whole LinkedIn thing to go back deeper to the actual principles. And so that's how, I ended up.
I love that. I think that's part of actually this marketing conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like understanding the book that would have the most profound impact and would help you stand out, particularly in a crowded marketplace? What's the differentiator? And for you, it was how you think about this, not just a technical piece of click here, click there. So for marketing purposes, what have you been doing to get the book out into the world? In particular, what have you done to help get the book out to lots of people, whether it's, selling lots of books or even giving away lots of books? Like what's the best way you've found to kind of create some buzz and some visibility?
So, since my book's only be out a few weeks, I'm still sort of writing, the launch meeting and the follow-ups on that, which, is quite a bit of work to actually do that. I am looking at speaking. I haven't really implemented that, but it is something that I'm pursuing. And then selling books in bulk. And so I for now I've only had one of those conversations, but somebody approached me and said, "Oh, some of the things in your book, some of those questions you ask are really good. Can I use them, in my program?" And I was like, "Okay, what do I do with that?" So my initial thought was, I'll just ask her to say that it came from my book and just share the link with people. And then I thought, how about you buy my book for each and every one of your members? And lo and behold, she said yes. So that's, I think, the kind of thinking that we need to start adopting. And of course, this just happened because she wrote to me, but I'm going to be pursuing more of that.
That's awesome. I do think that there's like what's possible around the corner. That when we're new to being an author, we have sort of a more limited view of what's on the horizon and what we can do and what we're working towards. And then either we see other authors doing something and we're like, we could do that. Or someone approaches us, which happens all the time, with an opportunity that we wouldn't have thought to do, but then we can pursue it on our own. I love this for you. I think that your message, I could see actually you reaching out to all of the business coaches that work with, particularly I'd probably say women, who have all those community groups. There's a zillion community groups of all kinds out there, membership driven groups, and you going in to do a either pro bono or probably not high paid speaking opportunity, but in exchange they guarantee a certain number of books being either purchased or they buy them from you, because those are all your client prospects in that room.
Right.
That could be really powerful, and you have then you'd have a stronger relationship with all these great connectors. So it's not, sometimes we're thinking big stages, like we want to be on these big conference stages, the whatever national association such and such, but sometimes you just go in a room with 30 people on a Zoom call and you will have 25 of them follow you on LinkedIn and 4 of them book a call with you. I'm like, that's pretty good. Like that's a good space to start.
Exactly. And it corresponds so much more to my personality and my style to be in a smaller room. So I am pursuing both, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And similarly, I think Bridgett, you and I are probably all trying to do the same circuit around like connecting with groups that have the kind of entrepreneurs that write books, right? Trying to catch them before they even know they're writing a book, which is a little bit tricky. It's really interesting. Robert, when you were working on your book, how tightly were you able to tie the book in a pipeline fashion to the business, the offerings that you have? Do you already have like a proven offer and the book was to really attract people to it? Did you use the book to create the offer? If I'm reading your book and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, how do I connect with you? And then what's the next thing I can do with you to stay in your orbit? Like kind of how did you think about that whole ecosystem?
Yeah. So for me, I'm in this space. I have a contract that I'm on that really, applies a lot of these lessons into my day-to-day interaction with the client. And so what I wanted to do is really just kind of enforce or bring, really emphasize the fact that I am, an expert in this field, in this arena, in this area, and then just explore opportunities with other potential clients. A lot of my contracts are government, Department of Defense, kind of bigger contracts, a lot of moving parts. But just to really emphasize again that I am a practitioner of what I wrote day in and day out. And, in fact, today, a series of meetings around the same kind of change initiative process is what my work consists of. And again, I just wanted to, within my community, kind of set myself apart and my company as being the no kidding resident expert in this space, and then create opportunities for more conversation. So again, Linda helped me a lot with calls to action on the website, on LinkedIn with every post. What you've helped me here on your side of the house, just creating next steps for next conversations. And it has worked. I mean, I've had, conversations come up as a result of the book on LinkedIn from folks that were in my network and then new additions to the network. So
Brilliant.
working and it's getting that traction. Nothing immediate because again, the way that our kind of business model works is these kind of bigger contracts that can sometimes take years to make. But it's been very effective at gaining conversations with other folks on this space and potential future work.
I love it. So Robert, how can people find you and follow your work?
So you can find me at newbeaconconsulting.com. I'm also on LinkedIn under newbeaconconsulting.com and or Robert Aguilar. On the website in particular, you'll find a little bit more information about the book itself, and then what we call the leadership lens, where a series of articles and blog posts that I've added to the website over the last year or two can be found there, and calls to action there for the website, phone call, all that LinkedIn stuff is there.
Brilliant. Sophie, before I ask you where people can find you and follow your work, piece of advice that you have for someone who's writing a book that will help them grow their business. There's a lot you've already shared, but is there anything that comes to mind that you'd want people to be thinking about?
Yeah, I think that advice of thinking of yourself as an author the minute you decide to write a book, before you write the first word, just put author in your LinkedIn headline as a symbol of it, or and everywhere else. Just describe yourself as an author, and then say that you're writing a book and say what it's about, and start asking people. Make it a completely co-created project, and then the implementation of that is what I described in terms of sharing the chapters, sharing the thoughts as you go along. But I think, first of all, I mean, it really brings people to your launch team, but also it makes it such a fun project, as opposed to be sitting in the dark. Well, not in the dark, but like all by yourself, writing a book. It can be a very solitary effort. This really made it feel like it was a completely, like, much more of a community project, so
That's
yeah,
excellent.
I would say.
And where can people find you and follow your work?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Sophie Lechner. You can email me at sophie@themagnetmodel.com, and you can check out my website at themagnetmodel.com.
Great. And I want to give a public shout out to you. I had several beta readers for my new book, Launch Your Book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews That Drive Revenue. And Sophie, I don't know how many hours you put into it, but if people like the book, I want to say that's because Sophie gave me that feedback.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I really enjoy being a beta reader. So
I think you may have a developmental editing role in your future. Honestly, there was more feedback and developmental editor feedback that I got from you than anyone else in it. And that's I think the part where an author's so close they can't see it. And when you started questioning things, I started questioning things, which led to a ripple effect of even more things being changed, because I started having like a critical lens a little bit. So really, I think what I want to share to the would-be writer to write a book is finding the person who truly understands what you're trying to do, but isn't an expert in it. And so they can ask the questions and raise the about something that maybe other people are like, well, of course. I mean, I remember my wife read the book and said, I don't know what hybrid publishing is. I'm like, oh, right. I have to explain that. Like, where everybody else was like, well, no one else mentioned it because to everyone else, look, we're in the world of books. So that's the kind of thing I would share. So Bridgett, as we close up, what is your advice besides buy the book, because your book is full of great advice, but are there like one or two big things that come to mind that you think everyone should start thinking about as they go down this process, particularly if they're writing a book to attract clients, that it's not just a book for a passion project, but a book to grow a business?
Absolutely. Write with the end in mind. Your book is not meant to be just a product. It is a pathway. It positions you as the expert. It filters in the right clients, and it gives people a taste of what it's like to work with you. And then also, Your book isn't just a business card, it's a bridge. Know what you want it to lead to and bake that into every single chapter. As a matter of fact, Allie and I wrote 2 chapters, chapters 13 and 14, that specifically tell people what to do. Call us, okay? So bake into every single chapter what it is you want people to do or what you want it to lead to. Use your book to answer the questions that your clients should be asking. And don't be afraid to show them what working with you really looks like. Make the book so good that people will want more of you, because that's where the magic is. And the business. That's where the magic happens and where the business happens.
I love this. Bridgett, how can people find you and follow your work?
connectwithb.com. Connectwithb.com. It has all the information on social, email, books, and all the good stuff. Connectwithb.com.
I'm going to put all the links, plus links to your social links, your book links, your website links. Also, Bridgett's one of our BizBook Pub Hub premier partners. So we're going to make sure people know about how to find you directly on the BizBook Pub Hub. So all of it's going to be available at bizbookpubhub.com. You'll find resources for all the shows that we release, about 24 hub partners. These are the experts that guide entrepreneurs through navigating, writing, editing, publishing, and marketing a book. Invitation to come to our free virtual networking events that I host each month. An invitation to join the Kindle cross promotion campaigns, and more. There's actually so much content there. Authors and would-be authors would very much benefit from checking out bizbookpubhub.com. And panel, thank you so much for this great conversation. I've really appreciated it.